Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is my list of 10 stocking stuffer gifts to go ahead and choose for yourself, for your friends, tell your friends to get you for the holidays. You are running a bit out of time here, so if these don't show up in time for this year, well, there's always next year. But I'll be diving into these. We got a host of some new, some old, some... None of these are borrowed, but at least one of them is blue. And let's go ahead and start off with my absolute favorite of the list, which is Skulls of Sedlec, my favorite button shy game. Skulls of Sedlec is a two-player drafting game, which you're going to have these little skulls that you're trying to place into a bit of a graveyard. You're going to be drafting them from 6 different graveyard piles, then pulling them into your hand, then starting to build out your own little tableaus, all of them scoring based on different criteria. Every single skeleton, every single skull in this little deck over here scores differently, and the way you draft them, what you hope to find, and how you combine and mash them all up will give you a solid, fun, my favorite button shy game by far. Lots of modules to mix this up, so this can be as cheap as a $10 gift or as much as like a $50 gift, all still while being roughly this size. Skulls of Sedlec is my favorite button shy game and will definitely fit in any stocking. Some of these might have a harder time fitting into stocking. Speaking of which, that Old Wallpaper is the largest game on this list, largest in physical space. The stocking for this one might be a bit much, but you might be able to make it work. But that Old Wallpaper from AEG is a game of drafting various cards from the tableau. You're going to have a central tableau, you're going to have cards down, you're trying to pull those cards in order to match up the patterns more efficiently, better than the other players. The player who can build out the largest scoring section of Wallpaper will win the game in that Old Wallpaper. From there we have the Loop from Pandasaurus, possibly... It's hard. Lots of these are very good games, but possibly my second favorite game on this list. Possibly, I think so. I mean, Skulls is definitely up there. Loop is there as well, but this is specifically the Loop, the Fur Brigade, because the Loop is a larger box game that definitely won't be fitting into your stocking, either budget-wise or size-wise. But if you have the Loop, or if you know someone who has the Loop, and you want to get a quick, simple expansion that is definitely worth picking up if you like that game, the Fur Brigade will give you 2 new characters for the game. You're going to have the Karaman the Black, a bit of a parody of Saruman, and then we'll have Arsene Lupus over here, a bit of a werewolf character. 2 new characters that have different ways they operate, primarily around the black hole cards. I think they're called black hole cards. Yeah, the black hole dimension cards. They're going to have different ways that they interact with the game. Saruman over there, Katruman has a whole deck full of black hole dimension cards, but has a hand size of 4, so it tends to have a bit of a slow start, but once you can get up and ramping, you can get some really solid loop turns going on because you have 4 cards drawn every turn. Meanwhile, Arsene Lupus is going to be dealing with a new currency in the game. You can have a new currency that can be dropped into the tower, ending up in different areas, will allow you to use different effects and or to teleport straight to that area. Whenever he uses a black hole dimension card, he's going to be able to generate more and more of that and then have his effects build off of how much of that currency is on the board. These little black tokens instead. A solid expansion through the Loop. If you like the Loop, this is a no-brainer as far as just quick, simple, extra stuff to pick up that any Loop lover will love. I think that makes sense. Then from there we have Smitten from Stonemaier Games. Smitten is, I think, the only Stonemaier games that I know of that breaks his design approach, which is every game should be between 1 to 5 players. I think that's the Stonemaier Games approach in general, and Smitten breaks that, being a 2-player cooperative game. Smitten is about trying to build out 2 matching patterns of cards. You're going to have a set of, I believe, 18 cards in here, and those 18 cards, you're going to have them in your hand trying to establish the matching pattern by activating the various abilities of the cards. With a minimal amount of communication, you are working together to try to have both of these patterns be matching through the use of the abilities and through the use of the card play. A quick, simple, smaller design project from Stonemaier Games, significantly smaller and stocking size compared to his usual stuff. Speaking of games with a lack of communication, we have The Mind from Pandasaurus Game. Another Pandasaurus title, and I think the only one where we have a double publisher on this list. The Mind from Pandasaurus Games, small box game. I've loved this for quite some time. Mine is sleeved, so it barely fits into this box over here. As you can see, it's a little pushed out over there. But The Mind is a game of lack of communication. It's a game about reading your opponent. You're going to be in this game. You're going to have a hand of cards, and you're playing down your cards in ascending order. So if I have, let's say I have a 23 and a 49, and you have a 17 and a 82, with a lack of talking, you have to play your 17 before my 23. Then I have to play my 49. Then you have to play your 72. If those were the 4 numbers I said, I don't really remember. But you're going to be playing those cards down into the grid, trying to play them, trying to time the playing of those cards before other players, without communicating, without talking, without anything else, just through kind of understanding the pacing of the game, but without actual direct communication in this. The Mind is an excellent game, Thoroughly enjoy this one. I like the dynamics this game produces every single time. I almost call this more of an experience than a game, but it's one that I consistently come back to, consistently play, and then when I eventually win it, which is challenging, you get to a point where I just don't table it for another 6 months before pulling it out again. Then we have Sunny Day Sardines from 25th Century Games. This is a light, simple set collection game in which you're going to be laying out a bunch of cards and then gathering fish every turn, taking fish into your hand before using those fish to fulfill orders. That's the core concept. It's a very simple game, 56 cards, little metal tin, very, very simple and to the point as far as what it's doing, but it gives you that gameplay mechanism. If you're looking for something that introduces you to simple set collection, to simple procedural gaming as far as, you know, gathering cards, fulfilling orders, all of that, then Sunny Day Sardines is a small box one, that nice little tin over here that matches with the theme of the game. Then from there, lots of good games left. We have Tatsu. Tatsu from Matago Games is a trick-taking game. An interesting trick-taking game in which you're going to be shuffling your decks of cards before distributing them to both players, which will allow you to actually control the pacing of the game. You see, you have a little control over when your cards are played. Combine that with some fusion cards and some other interesting elements, and overall Tatsu is giving you a very fascinating trick-taking game where it's not just about what's in your hand, it's about what's in your opponent's hand and how you can control that. A very, very intriguing game. Has a team variant as well that you can play with. Then from there, we have Kraken Lock-In Poker from Devere Games in theory. I say in theory because this is Devere Games' title, and it's one that, well, let's take a step back. This is from Dre Magerspiel or whatever, but Cockroach Poker has been picked up by Devere Games. Unfortunately, the Royal version not as much, so you might be able to find this. You might be able to find regular Cockroach Poker. I think regular Cockroach Poker is a drop better to introduce people to for the first time, versus I think Royal is a better one once you know the system. So both are solid. I have both in my collection. I think both are excellent. But Cockroach Poker is one in which you're bluffing. That's the entire game. You're bluffing as you pass cards to the other players and you say, I have a rat. And then they can either call you on your bluff or not, or they can look at it and pass it to the next player. It's the looking at the cards that introduces an interesting element to the game, because as soon as I pick up your card and I say, well, it's not a rat, it's actually a cockroach, and I hand it to the next player, suddenly you're trying to read the dynamics of multiple people issuing either agreeing or conflicting statements. Because I may have picked up a cockroach and said, yes, indeed, it is a rat, and passed it to you. So whether I say the same thing or not, there's always a question of trying to read multiple players and trying to read the table dynamics, because any player who gets 4 of the same type of animal loses, and so you're trying to read both the players, how they play, their play styles, and then what other players have at the table to try to figure out which kind of lie or truth is being told at any given moment, with the goal of getting you with the wrong card that will cause you to lose the game. From there we have Thingvellir from Hachette Games, Thingvellir from, I think from Hachette Games. Thingvellir from, say Hachette Games. Yes, there we go, Hachette Games. This is, or Hachette, I think it's Hachette. Thingvellir from Hachette Games is the expansion to Thingvellir, and this one introduces a whole bunch more special cards with a new way of getting them. When you win bids in this one, you'll have an opportunity to get these extra cards, giving you more of an incentive to win the bid, because it's not just about which card's good for your tableau, and sometimes they're always good to a degree. One of the downsides and upsides of Thingvellir is the fact that you want specific cards to go into your engine, but you don't mind getting a diverse set of cards because those allow you to get special cards. So while it is important to win at times, sometimes you lose that edge of just how important it is, because sometimes a bit of everything is going to be good for you. Thingvellir ramps that right back up by giving you more reasons to win bids, by giving you more of these special cards you can get your hands on. So it introduces more powers and abilities to the game with more of an interesting aspect of how you get your hands on them, giving you a very solid addition to the Thingvellir genre. There's also Idavol, which has come out as well recently, but I haven't played that one, so we'll talk about that in the future. And then lastly, we have Marvel Remix, the most recent game I've played on this list, I want to say. Marvel Remix is the newest one to me from WizKids Games, and this is a re-implementation of Fantasy Realms. Marvel Remix is giving you quick, fast play, an accessible theme. If you know this theme, you may have heard of it, the Marvel, characters and all that. Spider-Man, fairly well-known person, thing, whatever. Anyways, that's Thingvellir, not the wrong thing. Marvel Remix is a game but trying to optimize your hand. You're going to start the game with, I believe, 7 cards in your hand, 1 villain, and 6 in the other deck, and the game is about trying to discard cards and draw cards, or specifically draw then discard, until eventually you have the perfect culmination of cards that with their scoring opportunities work together incredibly well. The game is fast playing, gives you a 15 to 25 minute play time at most, and gives you just a solid, it's fun to build out your team, it's fun to build out your roster of heroes and villains and equipment and locations and all of that, and try to figure figure out how they all score together. It's a game we've seen done in Fantasy Realms, we've seen it done in a similar concept done in Red Rising as well. To me, Marvel Remix so far is the one I would recommend. I have not played Fantasy Realms, taking that into account, but I think this is fast playing with an identifiable theme and a game that is rewarding enough and short enough that this very much is a solid filler in my collection. And that's what we have. These are your 10 stocking stuffer recommendations, at least for today. They'll change up next week. There could have been 15 button shy games on this list. They all would have worked. But in any case, and until next time, I hope you find something good to pick up or gift or whatever in these 10 games. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.